She had exactly 45 seconds before the interview that would change her life, and her lipstick was smeared across her chin like a crime scene. The traffic light on Gangnam Boulevard was red. The black Maybach beside her was parked with its engine purring like a sleeping beast. And its window, that perfectly tinted, obsidian dark window, reflected her face back at her like the world's most expensive mirror. She didn't think twice. She leaned in, close enough that her breath fogged the glass, and started fixing her face. She twisted her braids over one shoulder, licked her thumb, wiped the lipstick smudge, reapplied her gloss, checked her teeth for spinach from the lunch she had stress-eaten 20 minutes ago, and then, because the universe clearly had jokes, she squeezed a tiny pimple on her nose. She squeezed it right there, 2 inches from the window of the most dangerous man in Seoul. And on the other side of that glass, Park Jae-sun, CEO of Haejin Group and the undisputed ghost king of Korea's underworld, sat perfectly still in the back seat with his whiskey halfway to his lips, watching every single second of it. His right-hand man, Dae-ho, glanced at him through the rearview mirror. "Should I lower the window, sir?" Jae-sun didn't answer. He just watched this woman, this absolutely unhinged, fearless, stunning woman pop a pimple on his 60 million won car and then smile at her own reflection like she had just conquered nations. Something shifted in his chest. It was small. Dangerous. Completely inconvenient. "Find out who she is," he said quietly. Dae-ho blinked. In 7 years of service, Park Jae-sun had never once asked about a woman. Not once. "Sir?" Did I stutter? The light turned green. She walked away without looking back, her heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown to something neither of them could stop. Her name was Kemi Adeyemi. She was 26, Nigerian-born, raised in Lagos until she was 17, then dragged to Seoul by an auntie who promised opportunity and delivered struggle. She worked 3 jobs. English tutor in the morning, cafe waitress in the afternoon, and on weekends, she did hair braiding for Korean women who found her Instagram page and booked appointments with messages full of heart-eye emojis. She was broke, exhausted, behind on rent, and right now, she was standing in the lobby of Haejin Group's corporate tower, trying not to pass out from nerves. The building was obscene. Glass and steel stretching into the clouds, the kind of architecture that whispered, "You don't belong here," to anyone whose bank account had fewer than 8 digits. She was here for a translator position. English-Korean, Korean-English. The pay was absurd, almost suspicious, 3 times the market rate, but her landlord had given her 14 days to pay up or pack up, so suspicious money was still money. Adeyemi Kemi, a receptionist called, butchering both names with surgical precision. Kemi stood. "It's Kemi Adeyemi, actually. Family name last." The receptionist didn't care. She gestured toward an elevator. 42nd floor. "You'll be interviewed by Director Shin." The 42nd floor smelled like money and intimidation. Everything was white marble and silence. A woman in a pencil skirt so tight it looked weaponized led her to a glass-walled conference room where a thin man with sharp cheekbones and sharper eyes sat reviewing her resume. Director Shin Myung-ho. He didn't stand when she entered. He didn't smile. He looked at her the way a surgeon looks at an X-ray, clinical, detached, searching for fractures. "Sit." She sat. "Your Korean is impressive for a foreigner. Where did you learn?" "Survival," she said. He almost smiled. "Almost. This position requires absolute discretion. You will translate for high-level meetings. You will hear things that are not meant to leave the room. If you have a habit of talking, this is not the job for you. I grew up with 5 siblings in a 3-bedroom flat in Lagos. I know how to keep my mouth shut." This time, Shin actually smiled. It lasted half a second, but she caught it. He leaned back. "There's one more part of the interview." "Okay. You'll meet the CEO." Her stomach dropped. Every article she had found about Haejin Group CEO was vague. No photos, No interviews. Just a name and a reputation that made people whisper. The door behind her opened, and the temperature in the room changed. She felt him before she saw him. It was like the air pressure shifted, like the building itself straightened its spine. She turned around, and her brain short-circuited. It was him. Well, not him, because she had never seen his face. But the car. That car. She recognized the man stepping through the door not by his features but by the energy, the same suffocating, magnetic weight she had felt standing next to that Maybach. He was tall, taller than she expected. Black suit, no tie, top button undone. His face was the kind of beautiful that made you angry, sharp jaw, dark eyes that looked like they had been carved from volcanic rock, lips pressed into a line that said he had never begged for anything in his life. He looked at her and stopped walking. For one full second, Park Jae-sun did absolutely nothing. Then the corner of his mouth twitched. "You," he said. Kemi's blood went cold. "I'm sorry." He walked to the head of the table and sat down, his eyes never leaving her face. "You used my car as a mirror this morning." "Oh God. Oh no. Oh, the ground needed to open up and swallow her whole right now, immediately, no delay. I didn't know anyone was inside. The tint was, you popped a pimple on my window." Shin looked between them, completely lost. Kemi wanted to die. Specifically, she wanted to die in a way that was quick and didn't involve this man's eyes pinning her to her chair like a butterfly in a display case. "I am so sorry. I'll pay for the cleaning. I mean, I can't actually pay for the cleaning because I'm sure it costs more than my rent, but I can." "You're hired." Silence. "What?" Shin SSI, process her paperwork. "She starts tomorrow." Shin opened his mouth, then closed it. He had questions. He swallowed every single one of them. Jae-sun stood and walked toward the door. As he passed her chair, he paused. He didn't look at her. He spoke to the air in front of him, but his words were meant for her ears only. "For the record, the pimple is gone. Your skin looks fine." Then he left, and Kemi sat in that glass conference room with her heart slamming against her ribs, wondering what in the world she had just walked into. If you're already hooked on this story, do me a quick favor, hit that subscribe button and tap the like button. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next because this story is about to take turns you will never see coming. She started the next day. Her first week was normal, almost disappointingly so. She translated documents, sat in on meetings with Japanese and American business partners, and learned that Heijin Group had its hands in everything: shipping, real estate, tech, pharmaceuticals. Legal empire, massive and sprawling. But there were other meetings. Ones that happened after 6 p.m., when the regular staff went home and the hallways emptied and men with tattoos creeping above their collar lines arrived through a private elevator she wasn't supposed to know about. She knew about it because on her third night working late, she got lost looking for the bathroom and ended up in a corridor that definitely wasn't on the building directory. She heard voices behind a heavy door. She recognized Jason's voice immediately, because apparently her brain had memorized the specific frequency of his words, which was a problem she would deal with later. She heard another voice, older, rougher. "The Busan shipment was intercepted. We lost 40 million won. Then find out who talked," Jason said, his voice so calm it was terrifying, "and make sure they never talk again." Kemi backed away from that door so fast she nearly tripped over her own heels. She went home that night and sat on her bed and stared at the wall for 45 minutes. Her boss was in the Mafia. Her incredibly attractive, pimple-commenting boss was literally a crime lord. The smart thing to do was quit. The rent is due in 9 days thing to do was stay. She stayed. The weeks folded into each other. She was good at her job, better than good. Her ability to switch between English, Korean, and Yoruba when she was frustrated, which she did not realize she was doing until Shin pointed it out, made her invaluable in multilingual negotiations. Jason requested her presence in more meetings. Then all meetings. Then meetings that weren't really meetings at all but excuses to have her in the room. She noticed. She pretended she didn't. He watched her when he thought she wasn't looking. He asked her opinion on deals, which made Shin's left eye twitch every single time. He learned she drank her coffee with an absurd amount of sugar and started keeping a sugar bowl on the conference table before she arrived. She told herself it meant nothing. He told himself the same thing. They were both lying. The crack in the dam happened on a Thursday night, 8 weeks in. She was translating a contract in her office when the power went out. Not the whole building, just her floor. She fumbled for her phone's flashlight and stepped into the hallway, and nearly walked straight into Jason's chest. "The backup generator is on the 44th floor, he said, looking down at her. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something dark and warm and probably worth more than her entire apartment. "I'll walk you." "I can walk myself. It's dark." "I have a flashlight." "Kemi." It was the first time he said her name. Not Ms. Adeyemi. Not the translator. Kemi. The way he said it, slow, deliberate, like he was tasting each letter, made her knees feel structurally unsound. They walked in silence through the dark corridor. Their shoulders brushed once, and neither of them moved away. He led her to a small lounge on the 44th floor where emergency lights cast everything in a low amber glow. He poured her water. She didn't ask for it. He gave it anyway. "Why did you come to Korea?" he asked, leaning against the counter. "My auntie." "And why did you stay?" "Because I'm stubborn." "That's not a reason." "It's the only one I have." He studied her face the way he studied everything, with an intensity that felt like being read. "You heard something. A few weeks ago. In the East Corridor." Her blood iced over. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You're a terrible liar. And you're a terrifying employer." He laughed. It was short, surprised, like he hadn't expected it to escape. She had never heard him laugh before. It transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. "Are you afraid of me?" he asked. "Should I be?" "Most people are." "I'm not most people. I used your car as a vanity mirror." He smiled, a real one this time, and she felt it in her stomach like a freefall. "No," he said softly. "You're definitely not most people." The lights came back on with a buzz and a flicker, breaking whatever spell had woven itself between them. She stepped back. He let her. But from that night on, everything was different. There was a woman named Yoon Seo-yeon, and she hated Kemi before they ever exchanged a single word. Seo-yeon was the daughter of Yoon Tae-young, the second most powerful man in Seoul's underworld and Jaesun's most critical alliance. A marriage between Seo-yeon and Jaesun had been discussed, planned, practically engraved in stone since they were teenagers. It was not a love match. It was a merger. Two empires becoming one, sealed with a wedding ring and a woman who had been groomed her entire life to stand beside a king. Seo-yeon was beautiful in the way that expensive things are beautiful, polished, precise, untouchable. She walked into Haejin Tower on a Monday morning wearing white Chanel and a smile that could cut glass, and the first person she saw was Kemi, walking out of Jaesun's private office carrying a stack of files. Seo-yeon didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her eyes did all the talking, and what they said was, "Who is this, and why is she breathing the same air as my future husband?" "Jaesun-ah," Seo-yeon said when she entered his office, closing the door behind her. "Who is the black girl?" "My translator." "Since when do you need a translator?" "Since I started doing business with people who don't speak Korean." "She was in your office." "She works for me." "That's where work happens." Seo-yeon sat on the edge of his desk, crossing her legs with practiced elegance. "My father is getting impatient." The engagement announcement was supposed to happen last month. I'm aware. Then why hasn't it happened? Because I haven't decided yet. Her smile didn't waver, but something behind her eyes cracked. There's nothing to decide. This was settled years ago. Things change, Seo-yun. She leaned forward. Don't make a mistake you can't undo, Jae-sun. My father is not a patient man. And patience is the only thing standing between your empire and a war. She left his office the way she entered, immaculate and lethal. But her hands were shaking when she reached the elevator, and the look she gave Kemi as she passed her desk was pure, undiluted venom. 2 days later, Kemi found a note on her desk. It was written in Korean, elegant handwriting, and it said simply, "Some doors are not meant for people like you. Walk away while you still can." She crumpled it and threw it in the trash. She didn't tell Jae-sun. The second note came a week later, slipped under her apartment door. This one was more direct. He will never choose you. You are entertainment. She is destiny. Know the difference. The third note came with a photo. It was Kemi, walking home from the subway at night. Taken from across the street. Someone was watching her. She told Jae-sun. She didn't want to, but the photo made her hands shake, and she was not a woman who shook easily. She showed him during a late meeting when they were the last two in the building. He looked at the photo, and his face did something she had never seen before. It went completely blank, like every emotion was sucked out of the room and replaced with something arctic and absolute. When did this start? 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. His voice was dangerously quiet. You waited 3 weeks to tell me. I thought it would stop. It won't stop. It will escalate. That's how these things work. He picked up his phone and made a call in rapid Korean, too fast for her to fully catch, but she heard the words security detail and find out who and if anyone touches her. He hung up and looked at her. You're not taking the subway anymore. Excuse me? My driver will take you home. I don't need your driver. This is not a negotiation. Everything is a negotiation. You taught me that in the Nakamura meeting. He stared at her. She stared back. The air between them was doing that thing again, that electric, heavy, impossible thing that made her forget he was a crime lord and made him forget he was supposed to be untouchable. Why do you fight me on everything? He asked, stepping closer. Why do you try to control everything? She shot back, not stepping away. Because people die when I don't. That landed like a slap. The room went quiet. Kemi. He said her name like it hurt. Let me keep you safe. Please. It was the please that broke her. In all her weeks of working for Park Jae-sun, she had never heard him say please. Not to business partners, not to his men, not to anyone. She nodded. His shoulders dropped a fraction, the only sign of relief he would ever show. Dae-ho will be outside your building at 7 every morning. Don't argue with him. He's sensitive. Your 6'3" bodyguard is sensitive? He cries at dog videos. Don't tell him I told you. She laughed, and he watched her laugh, and the look on his face was so open, so unguarded, so completely different from the man the world knew, that she had to look away before she did something catastrophic like fall in love with him. Too late. If this story is already pulling you in, drop a comment right now telling me whose side you're on, Kemi or Seo-yun. And if you haven't liked this video yet, what are you waiting for? Tap that like button and let's keep going because the drama is just getting started. The breaking point came at the annual Haejin Group Gala. Every major player in Korea's business world and its shadow world would be there. Kemi wasn't supposed to attend, but a last-minute complication with an American investor required a translator on site, and Jae-sun specifically requested her. He sent a dress to her apartment. She tried to send it back. It was a deep emerald gown, floor length, with a slit that climbed her thigh like a question mark. The fabric probably cost more than everything she owned combined. A note came with it. No name, but she knew his handwriting by now. Wear it. Consider it a work uniform. She called him from her phone, which she was not supposed to have his personal number on, but he had given it to her 2 weeks ago for emergencies. I can't accept a dress from my boss. Think of it as a corporate expense. Park Jae-sun. Adeyemi Kemi. Silence. Then, it's a beautiful dress, she admitted. I know. I picked it. More silence. I'll wear it. But I'm returning it after. You can try. She wore it. She wore it, and when she walked into the gala, the room noticed. She had done her own hair, goddess locks swept up into an elaborate updo with gold thread woven through. Her skin glowed against the emerald silk. She looked like she had been carved from something ancient and precious. Jae-sun was mid-conversation with a Japanese delegate when she entered. He stopped talking mid-sentence. The delegate followed his gaze, saw Kemi, and wisely pretended not to notice his host's complete mental shutdown. Daeho leaned in. Sir, you're staring. I'm assessing. You're staring. Daeho. Yes, sir. Shut up. Kemi worked the room like she belonged there. She translated for the American investor, charmed a table of Korean politicians with her flawless honorifics, and somehow ended up in a spirited debate about K-drama plot holes with a chaebol's wife who declared her the most interesting person at this entire boring party. But Seo-yeon was there too. She wore white, as always, a backless gown that clung to her like revenge. She watched Kemi from across the room with the focus of a predator tracking prey. And then she made her move. It happened on the terrace. Kemi had stepped outside for air, the gala's heat and noise pressing against her temples. She was leaning against the railing, looking out at Seoul's skyline, when Seo-yeon appeared beside her like a ghost in Givenchy. You look beautiful tonight, Seo-yeon said. Her voice was warm. Her eyes were not. Thank you. So do you. I wanted to introduce myself properly. I'm Yoon Seo-yeon. Jason's fiancée. The word fiancé hit Kemi like a bullet she didn't see coming. She kept her face neutral, because Lagos raised her tough and Seoul made her tougher, but something behind her ribs cracked. I wasn't aware he was engaged. It's not public yet. Our families have had an understanding for years. The announcement is coming soon. She turned to face Kemi fully, and the warmth dropped from her voice like a mask falling off. I'm telling you this as a kindness. Whatever you think is happening between you and Jae-sun, it isn't. He collects distractions. He always has. Beautiful things that amuse him until they don't. And then they disappear. Is that a threat? It's history. Ask anyone who's worked for him. Ask the last woman who thought she was special. She stepped closer, and her perfume was suffocating, heavy white florals that smelled like a funeral. You are temporary. I am permanent. The sooner you understand that, the less this will hurt. She walked away, her heels clicking against the terrace like a metronome counting down to something terrible. Kemi stayed outside for 10 minutes, breathing. When she came back in, she found Jae-sun immediately. Not because she was looking for him. Because he was always, somehow, exactly where her eyes landed first. Are you engaged? She asked. No preamble, no softening. His jaw tightened. Who told you that? Answer the question. It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. There's an arrangement between my family and the Yoon family. It was made when I was 19. I didn't agree to it then, and I haven't agreed to it now. But you haven't refused it either. He didn't answer, and his silence was the loudest thing she had ever heard. She nodded slowly. Thank you for the dress. I'll have it cleaned and returned to your office. She walked away, and for the first time in his adult life, Park Jae-sun wanted to chase someone and didn't know how. He found her in the parking garage 20 minutes later, standing next to Daeho's car with her arms wrapped around herself. She wasn't crying. She was too angry to cry. Kemi, wait. Don't. Let me explain. Explain what? That you let me walk into a room where your future wife was waiting, wearing a dress you bought me, looking like a fool? You didn't look like a fool. You looked like, he stopped. Swallowed. Like what? Like the only person in that room I wanted to see. The garage was empty. The concrete walls echoed his words back at them, making them bigger, heavier, impossible to ignore. That's not fair, she whispered. None of this is fair. He stepped closer. She didn't step back. The arrangement with Seo-yeon is political. Her father controls the ports. Without his alliance, my operation is vulnerable. If I refuse the marriage, it's not just business I lose. People who depend on me, people I'm responsible for, they become targets. So I'm supposed to be, what? The woman on the side? The secret you keep in a drawer? No. His voice cracked on the word, and the sound of it, the raw, jagged edge of it, made her chest ache. Then what am I, Jae-sun? He reached for her hand. She let him take it. His fingers closed around hers, and his skin was warm, and his grip was desperate in a way that his face would never show. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up. You're the reason I find excuses to call meetings that don't need to happen. You're the woman who used my car as a mirror and made me feel something I didn't think I was capable of feeling. He pulled her closer, and his forehead touched hers, and they stood there breathing each other's air in a parking garage that smelled like concrete and gasoline, and it was the most romantic moment of her entire life, and she hated that. I need time, he said. To fix this. To find another way. And if there is no other way? Then I'll burn every alliance I have before I let you go. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't soft. It was the kind of kiss that ruins you, that rewrites your DNA, that makes every kiss that came before it feel like practice. His hand cradled the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her locks, and she grabbed the lapels of his suit and pulled him closer, and the world outside that garage could have been on fire and neither of them would have noticed. When they finally pulled apart, her lipstick was on his mouth, and she reached up and wiped it with her thumb, and he caught her wrist and pressed his lips to her palm, and she thought, I am in so much trouble. She was right. Everything after the gala accelerated like a car with no brakes. Jae-sun assigned 2 additional security guards to Kemi without telling her. She found out when she tried to go to the convenience store at midnight for ramen and 2 enormous men in black suits materialized on the sidewalk like they had spawned from the concrete. She texted Jae-sun, call off your shadows. He replied, no. She replied, I will fight them. He replied, they're trained in 6 martial arts. She replied, I'm from Lagos. He didn't reply because he was laughing too hard, and Dae-ho, who was driving, nearly crashed the car because he had never heard his boss laugh like that. But the laughter didn't last. Yoon Tae-young, Seo-yeon's father, was not a man who tolerated delays. He was old-school Korean underworld, the kind of man who built his empire on loyalty and blood and who viewed broken promises the way most people viewed acts of war. He invited Jae-sun to dinner. This was not a social call. They met at a private room in a restaurant that served food worth more than most people's monthly salaries. Tae-young was in his 60s, silver-haired, with the calm demeanor of a man who had ordered terrible things done with the same tone he used to order wine. My daughter tells me you've hired a foreign woman, Tae-young said, pouring soju with steady hands. I've hired many people. Don't play games with me, boy. I changed your diapers. I held your father's hand when he died. I have earned the right to speak plainly. Jae-sun set his glass down. Then speak plainly. End it. Whatever it is. The girl is a liability. She makes you visible, and visible men get killed. She's an employee. She's a weakness. And Seo-yeon is patient, but patience has limits. Mine certainly do. Is that a threat, uncle? Tae-young smiled, and it was the saddest, most dangerous smile Jason had ever seen. It's a fact. You have until the end of the month to announce the engagement. After that, I will assume our alliance is over and act accordingly. Accordingly meant war. It meant blood in the streets, businesses burned, people hurt. The weight of it settled on Jason's shoulders like a physical thing, and he carried it out of that restaurant and into the back of his car and all the way home, where he sat in his penthouse in the dark and stared at his phone, at the last message Kemi had sent him. A photo of a stray cat she had found outside her apartment, orange and fat, with the caption, "I'm naming him Tekbaki because he's spicy and bad for my health. Kind of like you." He pressed his phone against his forehead and closed his eyes and felt the walls of his life closing in from every direction. 2 days later, Kemi was attacked. She was walking from the cafe to the subway, a 10-minute stretch she had done 1,000 times. It was 7 in the evening, still light, still crowded. She was on the phone with her younger sister back in Lagos, laughing about something stupid, when a black van pulled up beside her and 2 men jumped out. They didn't speak. They grabbed her arms and tried to drag her toward the van. She screamed. She fought. She drove her heel into one man's foot and her elbow into the other's throat, and the self-defense classes she had taken at the community center were worth every single one because she broke free for 3 seconds, just long enough for one of Jason's security guards to reach her. What happened next was violent and fast and ended with both attackers on the ground and Kemi pressed against a building wall with her heart hammering and blood on her sleeve that wasn't hers. Jason arrived in 11 minutes. She knew because she counted every second. He came out of the car before it fully stopped, and the look on his face was something she never wanted to see again, a kind of fury so pure and total that it didn't look like anger. It looked like annihilation. He reached her and his hands cupped her face, and he turned her head gently, checking for injuries, his fingers trembling against her skin. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay." "You're shaking." "So are you." He pulled her against his chest, and she let him, and he held her so tightly she could feel his heartbeat through his suit, and it was racing, and she realized that Park Jae-sun, the man who controlled an empire, the man who made grown men afraid with a glance, was terrified. Not for himself. For her. "I know who sent them," he said into her hair. "Who?" He didn't answer. She pulled back and looked at his face and saw the answer there. Seo-yeon? Her father. A warning. A demonstration of what happens when I don't comply. Something inside Kemi hardened. Not broke. Hardened. Like clay in a kiln, like iron in a forge. She was not a woman who broke. She was a woman who transformed. Then what are you going to do about it? He looked at her, and in his eyes she saw the exact moment he chose her. Not his empire. Not his alliances. Not the future that had been mapped out for him since he was 19. Her. Something that can't be undone, he said. That night, Park Jae-sun declared war. Not with guns. Not with blood. With information. He had spent 10 years building Haejin Group into the most powerful organization in Korea's underworld, and in that time, he had collected secrets the way other men collected watches. Every deal Yoon Tae-young had made, every law he had broken, every official he had bribed, Jae-sun had records. He hadn't kept them as weapons. He had kept them as insurance. Tonight, they became weapons. He called a meeting of every major family in Seoul's underworld. 12 men and 3 women sat around a table in a private room in Haejin Tower, and Jae-sun laid out evidence that Yoon Tae-young had been skimming from shared operations for over 8 years. Millions of won. From every family at the table. The room erupted. Tae-young, who had been invited under the pretense of a routine summit, stood so fast his chair fell backward. You ungrateful dog. I made you. You made yourself rich off people who trusted you, Jae-sun said calmly. I'm simply correcting the record. This is about the girl. This is about that African, careful. Jae-sun's voice dropped to a whisper, and every person in that room felt the temperature fall. The next word out of your mouth will determine how this ends for you. Tae-young looked around the table, searching for allies, and found none. The evidence was irrefutable. The betrayal was unforgivable. In 20 minutes, a decade-long alliance shattered, and Yoon Tae-young walked out of Haejin Tower stripped of his alliances, his credibility, and his power. He was finished, and everyone in that room knew it. Seo-yeon came to Kemi's apartment that night. Kemi opened the door and found her standing there, no makeup, no armor, no Chanel. She looked smaller without all of it. Human. You ruined everything, Seo-yeon said. Her voice was raw. Your father ruined everything when he sent men to grab me off the street. I didn't know he was going to do that. But you knew about the notes. The photos. The threats. Seo-yeon's silence was a confession. I loved him, Seo-yeon whispered, and there were tears on her face, and Kemi felt something she didn't expect. Not sympathy exactly. Recognition. She knew what it felt like to want someone so badly you became someone you didn't recognize. I'm sorry, Kemi said, and she meant it. Not for loving him. That's your right. But for what your family did. For what you let happen. Seo-yeon wiped her face with the back of her hand, a gesture so unrefined, so unlike the woman Kemi had seen at the gala, that it felt like watching someone remove a costume. He was never going to choose me, was he? I don't think he was ever given the chance to choose at all. Until now. Seo-yeon left without another word, and Kemi closed the door and leaned against it and cried. Not for herself. For the messiness of it all, for the way love turns people into weapons and shields and collateral damage all at once. 3 days later, Jae-sun came to her apartment. It was the first time he had been there. He stood in her tiny living room, this man who lived in a penthouse that overlooked all of Seoul, and he looked at her mismatched furniture and her collection of Nollywood DVDs and the orange cat sleeping on a pile of laundry, and something in his expression softened in a way that made her want to memorize his face. Nice place, he said. Don't lie in my house. He smiled. Then he got on his knees. Not to propose. Not yet. He knelt in front of where she sat on the couch and took both her hands in his and looked up at her with those dark, volcanic eyes. I dismantled an empire for you. I broke alliances that kept me safe for a decade. I have made myself vulnerable in ways I swore I never would. And I would do all of it again. Every single part of it. Because you used my car as a mirror, and you weren't afraid of me, and you named a stray cat Tekbaki, and you are the most extraordinary person I have ever known. She was crying. She was laughing. She was doing both at the same time, which was a very Lagos thing to do. I love you, he said, and the words sounded like they had been locked inside him for years, like they had been pounding on the walls of his chest and he had finally let them out. I love you, she said back, and her voice was steady and sure, and it sounded like a door opening. He kissed her, and this time it was slow and tender and thorough. His hands slid to her waist and pulled her off the couch and into his lap on the floor, and she wrapped her arms around his neck, and the kiss deepened until they were both breathless, and Tekbaki the cat meowed loudly in protest at being disturbed. They pulled apart laughing, foreheads together, noses touching. Your cat hates me, he said. He hates everyone. You'll earn his respect eventually. How? Treats and patience. Same way I earned yours. He kissed her nose, her cheek, the corner of her mouth. Move in with me. You're insane. Probably. Your penthouse doesn't allow pets. I'll buy the building. Jae-sun. Kemi. She looked at him, this impossible man, And she thought about the girl who stood on a street corner in Gangnam with smeared lipstick and a dream and no idea that a tinted car window would change her entire life. "Ask me again in 6 months," she said. "I'll ask you every day until you say yes." That's annoying. That's love. She kissed him to shut him up, and it worked, and the cat eventually fell back asleep, and outside the window Seoul glittered like a promise, like a city that had watched a girl from Lagos and a boy from the shadows find each other against every odd, and decided, just this once, to let them win. But this story is far from over. Because in a darkened office across the city, Yoon Tae-young sat behind a desk covered in photographs. Photographs of Kemi. Photographs of Jae-sun. Photographs of every person Jae-sun had ever loved. And on his phone, a message from a number with no name, the shipment from Busan. I can tell you who really intercepted it. And I can give you Park Jae-sun on a silver platter. All I need is your word that the girl suffers first. Tae-young stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed one word, done. He pressed send, and somewhere across Seoul, a phone buzzed in the pocket of someone Kemi trusted, someone she saw every day, someone who smiled at her and knew her coffee order and had been watching, waiting, gathering information with the patience of a spider building a web. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. And the next battle wouldn't come from an enemy. It would come from inside Jae-sun's own house. If this story left you breathless, you need to subscribe right now because part 2 is coming. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss it. Drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen next, and who do you think the traitor is? Like this video if you want more stories like this, and share it with someone who loves a good drama. Trust me, they'll thank you. Until next time.